Hey, Susan Palmer here of Lead Cat Press. This is my weekly studio update. Just did a little improv over a bass drone. The note was C, and I was mostly playing C major or C major 7 ideas because that's what came up in my studio this week. Now, I do have jam tracks for all 12 notes, so if you want to take any of this stuff through all 12 keys, I would be so happy. Anyways, I want to go over some things to do with the CAGED system, specifically with the CAGED scale patterns. And I just want to show some things that kind of light bulbed off for some of my students this week. And I don't know, maybe they'll be helpful for you. So I usually think of the CAGED system, some chord shapes along with those scale patterns. I find that seeing the shapes within the patterns to be really helpful. So I'm just going to play C major 7 chord shapes in those places. So we have a C major 7 in a C shape or a B string root, although I'm not playing the C on the B string. If you study with me, then you know why that is. But I'm still categorizing that as a B string root. Then I've got a C major 7 with an A string root, C major 7 with a G string root, C major 7 with an E string root, and C major 7 with a D string root. And all of these chord shapes are in the corresponding scale pattern. So here's C major 7. There's that second string root pattern for the C scale. C major 7, and then C major 7, C major 7, and C major 7. And I'm just doing one octave there because it's Friday and I'm tired. And you have all of those patterns both in my book and on the website. So hopefully you'll check those out. At any rate, what I want to say about these scale patterns is, we identify the scale pattern with its root note based off of the chord shape. So that's why we've got a C major chord here, and our root note is on the B string. And so we think of that scale pattern as being a B string root. But we also have a C under your third finger here. And this is the note that we use to categorize this pattern, the A string root. So each one of these patterns has their root note in at least 2 different places, but we categorize the scale pattern or the chord shape based on one note location, and that's the one that's from the corresponding chord shape. So that's a pretty important connection that you need to make. But after you know that, and you've kind of gone through these scale patterns and the chord shapes, one thing that you can do is take advantage of their shared notes. So there are 5 different scale patterns. 2 of them have a root note that they share on the A string. So this pattern, and then the next pattern up, which is the A string root. So you could think of, those 2 chord shapes or those 2 scale patterns as being linked by that note on the A string. The other 3 all relate somehow to this note C on the E string. So starting with the G-shaped chord. So here's my C chord, C major chord, in a G shape. Now again, I categorize this chord based off of the G string, and this is the note C. That's how I think of this chord shape here. But we also have a C, on the low E string and the high E string right there. This is where we start if we were playing, a C major scale starting on the note C in this G string root pattern. This is where we would start. Now that note is similar to when we play an E-shaped chord or an E string root, and the E string root scale pattern is also right there. So both of those patterns share that same note. One, I'm using my 4th finger to start the pattern, and then for the next one, I'm using my 2nd finger to start that pattern. And then I said there were 3, so the last one is this D string root pattern. And again, we think of the D string root scale and chord as having its root note on the D string. So here's C on the D string, but we start that pattern right there. So we've got 2 scale patterns that share root notes with the A string, and then 3 scale patterns that all somehow relate to this wonderful C on the E string. So my hope is that that connection helps you transpose these to different keys. Now I've got all 12 of those bass drone tracks on my website as well as YouTube, so you can use those to try that. I also have a bunch of jam tracks just using major keys, so like actual chord progressions that you can use. I like just kind of zoning out on one chord, so that's why I played, lots of C inversions. I played some sixths in the little warm-up thing that I did. I also like using those bass drums for scale warm-up, so I did this I put that in my little improv there, but it is something that I really like teaching students. I think it's really helpful when you're learning your scale patterns. And with this, I'm half stepping into each note. B, C, E, I'm playing a third there. C sharp, D, F, E flat, E, G. So I'm playing thirds, but half stepping into each note. I also played a lick, one of my favorite ones. I'll let you figure that out and apply that in those different keys. Have a great week. I'll be here next week.